Out there cold. I did yoga this morning. I'm all good.
All right, I think it's kicking off.
Sweet. This is awesome.
Hey, Scott.
Rob, how are you?
How's it going? Yeah, not too bad.
Excellent.
So you're
excellent. I think
at the golf course.
We got a good. I am. Yeah, it's a nice rainy day here in San Jose. It looks like it's about the same in the city there. A little froggy.
Yeah, pretty miserable day today. I was stuck in the train for like 15 minutes on the way in. It just wasn't moving. That's a pain. Yeah.
Brutal.
Anyways,
we're moving our
neither
kid
here
this
nor
weekend.
there.
It's supposed to pour rain all day Saturday while we're moving her out. It's gonna be great.
Oh yeah, because she's moving to South City or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, hey, excited for this topic.
I am too. I think it's a really good one.
Yeah, forecasting without fairy dust, which I think touches on a lot of things, right? Because I mean, like we spend a lot of time talking to sales leaders, and I think we've talked about this before. But like one of the things that kind of surprised me, I thought like they would really dig, like forecasting, but like they're universally happy with how they forecast. They're like, oh, we nail our forecast every quarter, spot on, and they pride themselves on it. And I'm like, okay. But then like you dig in a little bit further, and it's like done with like only great effort. It's like basically their full-time job is to actually figure out what the reality on the ground is, right? Like talk to the individual reps, take their story with a giant grain of salt, try to figure out like if what they're telling you is like just a yarn that they're spinning or if it's like legit, and then play that all the way up, right? So it's like instead of actually helping them close a deal, it's more just like badgering them and trying to figure out what the reality on the ground is, which I think is interesting because it's a hard job to do. It's hard to get the forecast right.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that is a, first of all, like it's interesting, like I assume that like most CROs are like 40-ish years old and they've kind of like always come up with like forecasting being an art and not a science. And then over the next 10 years, like do we see that turning more into science, and CROs and VPs of sales can just kind of like lean back and go, okay, I don't need to spend 5-10 hours a week like calling up and saying, hey Rob, like what's going on with this deal, when was the last time you talked to him, and then like doing this mental gymnastics to put that into a spreadsheet that I can roll up.
Yeah, I mean it definitely will. I mean we obviously help.
I feel like it has to, right?
Well, it has to. I mean, I think it's like sales in and of itself has been an art, I think it still is, and it always will be in some form or fashion, but I don't think forecasting should be. Like there's a reality on the ground. It's like, are they going to buy or not? How confident are we about that? Like even if they are going to buy, like, are they going to buy this quarter is another huge thing that you have to get right, and I think that requires like a depth of understanding of like what's going on in the other, how far along you are, what needs to be done, and like how long those things are going to take to actually get signature on a contract.
Yeah. Do you think that is that something that you find like is surfaceable, or is it because I find like a lot of times like reps just don't ask those questions. They just like hey, you know what, they've kind of hint, like there's like a lot of hinting at like when a deal is going to get signed and when it's going to come in, but they never come right out and go, hey Rob, like can you sign this by the end of December, or are you going to be on vacation and like you don't care, or like your procurement guy is like out for 2 weeks, like can we get this done by the end of the month or not? And like obviously you have to have a little bit more tact than that, but like that's the question that needs to get asked. And I find that a lot of people are afraid to ask that question and come right out.
It's like their job. I mean, I've worked with.
It is their job. It's 100% their job. Like their job is to go get money.
Yeah, but I don't even think like the buyer would be like offended by that. It's like they know why they're talking to a salesperson. But yeah, like it is. It's not universal. Like the good ones ask it. There's a guy I used to work with at MoveWorks, Jason Snooks. He was awesome at asking those types of questions. It's like he would even like handhold people. I remember we were working with Twitter, or it was Twitter back then, anyways. And the gal where, yes, I'm older than 2 years old. The gal we were working with was she'd never bought anything before, and she was like pretty new there. And he's like, all right, well, let me help you through procurement. Like typically there's security review. Like I would ask them like what that process is like, because we got to kick that off. And like all that. Like, he was just like really good at understanding that, and she was actually very appreciative of that, and we got the deal done.
Oh, I'm certain. I feel like anything that you can do to empower your champion and make them look good internally, because I'm sure that she was like talking about this project and she's going to buy the software and kick off this thing and it's going to do all of this magic. And then she kind of goes like, okay, well, how do I make that happen? Like, what do I have to do to go buy this thing? And, you know, if she has no idea, like she need like a good salesperson, their whole job should be helping to project manage that.
Yeah. Well, he recognized like the risk in like his forecast too. It's like, I can't call this at a certain date if I have no idea what their process to actually like buy software is like, you know. And that's and like to your point, like people are afraid to ask those questions. So I think like part of it is like, one, understanding what you know and what you don't know, right? Because like what you don't know is oftentimes like more important than what you do know, right? But then like also like you'll have to coach the reps through the things that they don't know. It's like, hey, you don't know what their security approval process is like, or how long that takes, or you know what their legal review process is like, and you know what the backlog is, and it's the holidays, and it's almost the end of the quarter, and they're probably dealing with a bunch of stuff. Like, you need to ask these questions, right? And I think like with a system like that, like you can turn this more into a science than an art, you know?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the other thing is like, you know, you have to have a pretty good relationship with whoever is buying your software to kind of wedge them into an end of the year purchase. Now, end of the year is always interesting because people do run out of budget and they've got to use it or lose it. But you know, they don't fucking care whether you buy it in December or they buy it in January or whatever. Like, as long as like their needs are being met and they're getting the price that they want and they're able to kick their project off at the right time. And I almost feel like from a forecasting standpoint, like you've got to ask those questions much earlier in the process in order to be accurate about it, right? Because if I ask somebody and they're like, yeah, you know, we're probably going to buy this in February, like the odds of me being able to twist their arm and force them into December is pretty close to zero. And as soon as you start trying to do that, then you're an asshole trying to like force these people into something that they don't want to do. And then you're like, then you become like the desperate sales guy. It's like, oh, hey, Rob, if I give you 25% off, like, will you buy this in December?
Yeah.
No, just like do a better job of like building your pipeline so that you've got stuff that's going to close in December and January and February and so on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you got to like know that well before the end of the quarter, right? Because I think like part of like not hitting your number, I mean, if you think about, you know, how do you hit your quota, right? It's, I'd say like the number of opportunities that are in your pipeline times like the percentage of those, your close rate, right? So, and then you multiply that by the average, you know, contract value, right? And then you divide that over like, you know, how long it takes you to close a deal on average. And I think like the ACV part and like end of quarter discounts, it's like the easiest thing to do, but yeah, that cuts into your ability to like hit your target, hit your number, like not just at a personal level, but for like leadership level. If you're giving like 25% haircuts on top of everything, that makes everything 25% harder to reach your targets, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I think like if you don't ask those questions really early on in your process, you've got what our friend Adon calls a hope forecast. Because you're just, you know, you're hoping that, oh yeah, I hope that they sign it in December. Well, have you asked them if they're going to sign it in December? No, I haven't asked. I'm just kind of hoping that they will. And, you know, they're saying all the right things or whatever, you know, kind of bullshit that salespeople feed you. I do think but it's hard. Like as a sales leader, like, you know, if your whole like forecasting is built around, you know, kind of sprinkling fairy dust, the title of this podcast, like if your whole forecast is built around sprinkling fairy dust, like that's not really a forecast. That becomes like a hopa. And what ends up happening is like over the course of a quarter or two, like you really start to erode that trust that you have with your executives. Yeah. And, you know, as you know, sitting in the CEO seat, like if you can't forecast accurately, like I always had this problem with like a rep that worked for me. And he was a very, very good salesperson. He was just the worst at forecasting. And it wasn't until we sat down and we said, like, look, like if you're saying $100,000 is coming in, like we take your word for that and we're going to go out and spend appropriately. And if you're saying it's not going to come in, then we're going to cut costs appropriately. But like we have to know like what's coming in so that we can go manage our business appropriately. And I think like that's the area where I don't think that salespeople have enough visibility into like what are the machinations of the business? Like if I know I've got a $5 million deal coming in and I'm like 90% certain, you know what, maybe I'll go out and I'll take some risks and I'll spend accordingly. Similarly, if I know I've got a $5 million churn happening, well, shit, then I'm going to start to cut costs
Yeah.
appropriately there, and that's how you run the business. And I don't think that enough
Yeah.
salespeople really have that.
Yeah, I don't think I've
What
seen
like
that.
I mean,
And
you're kind of running like an early stage organization, Rob. Like what is important to you from a forecast and from an observability standpoint?
yeah, well, I mean, like for us, it's I mean, like we
It's
have
life
to
or death,
know how
right?
much. Well, yeah, I mean, like we're not like a massive like you say like I don't know, Adobe comes to mind for whatever reason, but like you can predict how much revenue is going to come in. Like you don't really need like to do individual forecasts because like there's so much volume that you can just look at it as like a data science exercise essentially, and you
Yeah.
can be within a couple percent. So like you can build budgets and stuff around that. Like for me, it's like do we grow our company like 30% or 0% next month? Right. I
Yeah.
mean, that's like, so
Uh,
yeah, you got to know. And
that's a big shift.
yeah, yeah. Cause I mean, like a couple deals is much more significant for us than it is for an Adobe, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We had, when I was at Sovos, we had like every week we would do like this forecast meeting. It was like 250 plus rows of like deal by deal. It was like a brutal giant waste of time that this person would put us through it. The CRO at Sovos would put us through. It was terrible. And to your point, like those deals are coming in, like it's a $700 million company. Like, that they're, 90, some percentage of them are going to come in. You don't need to go deal by
Yeah.
deal there. Like you were saying with Adobe. God, you just brought back some PTSD. What about like when you start thinking about like the really well-defined exit criteria, you start thinking about like methodologies like medpick and stuff like that. Like, how does that tie into forecasting in your mind?
It doesn't really.
No?
Like
Okay.
I think I'm probably think about this differently than a lot of like sales leaders. I mean, MedPick tells you like qualification criteria. I mean, I've seen lots of deals that have like every letter in MedPick checked off and then they don't close. Like it's a box checking exercise, but like it doesn't mean that they're going to buy. And like I've also seen deals that come in where like you don't do any of that stuff and they come in and they're just like, hey, I used you at my last company. Like I want to buy. It's like I'm not going to sit there and like ask them a bunch of questions
Yeah, of course.
like that are irrelevant, right? So I think it's like a good framework for like reps, especially as you're getting started as at like a new company. So you can like kind of like wrap your mind around like, okay, what are the types of things I'm gonna have to ask? Like how do we define like ROI and value? And like it's good for that stuff. But I think like any experienced rep like doesn't give two shits about it.
See, I'll challenge that a little bit, especially as we're talking about forecasting here. I think that the D for decision process, back to your point about like security reviews and stuff like that, is such a critical thing to have to understand in your deals, right?
So
I feel like
that part of like
okay,
medtech
all right.
for sure. Yes.
So I feel like decision process and paperwork process are like two of the really critical ones to forecast accurately.
Yeah.
And
I'd say like the closer you get to like the deal being done, like absolutely. Like metrics, like sometimes they just like know that internally. It's like not really like definable. It's like I like this thing. I've used it before. It makes my life easier.
I'm such a bigot around MedPick. I love it so much. And I feel like if you can figure out like what the metrics are, like that helps you define like pain and metrics to me are the two most important. By the way, that's like an interview question that I ask.
But I mean, okay, but what if somebody comes in and they say exactly that? Like I've used this in the past. I just want to use it here. I like it. Like do you
Fine, great,
do you like
done.
go
like,
into
no,
cool?
no,
Then you move into like
that would be
paper
stupid.
process,
But like
right? Yeah.
99% of my deals throughout my career have not been, I've used this in the past. I can't wait to use it again. Most of the deals I've done are like net new logo deals where you kind of have to understand like what's the pain that they're going through and like how big of a pain that is and what's the impact of that pain, and really starting to uncover a lot of those things. I wish that more people would have called me and said, I've used you guys in my past life. Can I buy you again? And it's a quick like 2-day sales cycle.
Yeah.
Do you think that what kind of organizations in your experience, Rob, are dealing with like sandbagging, happy ears, whatever you want to call it, when it comes to forecasting? Like, do you feel like they are like, maybe ask a different way. Do you feel like a really like harsh, like micromanagement type of organization tends to surface more sandbagging in the pipeline and forecast, or do you think that it is the lackadaisical, you know what, like the deals that come in when they come in, like that starts to generate more sandbagging there?
Yeah, there's a happy medium. I mean, I've seen it depends too on like how intense they are about it. I mean, like one of the other things that was like on the topic for discussion, this might be a good time to move into it, is like QBRs,
Yeah.
right? Because like when you build like that like super hardcore like fear-based culture, you know, you're at a QBR, like what are you gonna do? Right? Like you're gonna tell a rosier picture, like happy years type of story when you're up there in front of all your peers getting grilled by your manager, then is probably like, you know, the reality on the ground, right?
Yeah, I mean, you've never gotten to go through my QBRs. Like I know Dom has, and I'll defer to him when you chat with him next. I love calling people out. Like if they throw up a deal that has like no chance,
Yeah,
like that's just a bad move for the seller. Like if you don't know shit about your deal and you're going to go up and present it to everybody, like you've got to expect that somebody's going to like poke holes in it, or at least try to poke holes in it. Um, and it's funny, like when people get caught with their pants down a little bit because they're like, "Oh,
yeah,
I guess I don't know what's going on with this deal." And it's like, "All right, well, like, we're not here to beat you up, but we're here to like help you figure out like what are your blind spots in your deal, and you got an awful lot of blind spots."
yeah. Should that only happen at QBR though?
No, that should happen all the time, but like it's the QBR lays the foundation for what you're going to do for that quarter,
So,
right?
so how do you typically run QBRs? Because I've been at QBRs at, you know, 6, 7 different companies, and
Yeah.
they've been run differently. But I'm curious, like your approach to those.
So I can send you my template, or we can even like use my template as like a way to run this. Like I usually allocate 90 minutes for a seller. Usually they go about 60. Sometimes they go all 90, and sometimes like the fastest one was this guy, Jonathan Flores. Jonathan would get through, he would get through his QBR in like 14 minutes. And it was like, like he was just like, this is what I did. This is what I'm doing. Here's the status of these deals. And I got to go. But, so what I look at is like, okay, well, like, what was your past performance over the past quarter? And why? Like, did you make the number? Okay, well, how come you made the number? Did you miss the number? Like, what were the reasons that you missed the number?
Do you
What
ever
were
like
kind of
look back and see like what did they call it the last QBR, and how much of
oh,
like how
always.
aligned was that with what happened? Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, you got to put that up. Like that's the very first thing that's the very first slide. Like, oh, I called 500,000. I delivered 450. Okay, like you came in at 90%. Like, well, let's talk about like what was that? What was the delta? Oh, I came in at 90% because the deal with XYZ company slipped and we got it signed the second week of the quarter. Oh, okay, like shit happens. I get it.
Yeah.
Versus like, oh, I called 500 and I came in at 150, and it's because I just didn't do jack shit all quarter. So it's like past performance. Why was it there? What were some of the key deals that you did? And then you get into, okay, well, what are like the top 3 deals you're focused on for this quarter? And these are like these should be like your big marquee deals for the quarter. And they don't necessarily have to come in, but it's like, all right, well, we're going to allocate a bunch of resources to ensure they give us the best chance of these things coming in.
Yeah.
And we do like a really deep dive med pick review on them, because at that point I do want people to see like what are the blind spots that they have. Like, can they understand, like, is there pain there? Because if there's no pain there, like nobody's buying anything. And if it's not a big enough pain with the metrics, they're not going to buy anything either. And really dive into like what's causing that. So we'll do that for the big 3 deals. Then we talk about like, okay, what do you need from what do you need from the company? Do you need more leads? Do you need more ABM? Like, what do those campaigns look like? Like, what are you going to do? What do you need? And then the last slide is like, what are you going to do to build your own pipeline? And I want to see like, okay, what are the exercises they're doing? Like, okay, we're just going to like pound the phones. I'm going to run this ABM campaign. I'm going to go to this conference. I'm going to go do whatever it might be. So it's like, it's fun. We have a good time doing it, but it's also at the same time, it's very serious. And like, I want to make sure that like people have a good plan to get to a number. Now, as you know, like, if I'm going to go to the supermarket to pick up dinner, like I at least have like a list. Now the road to get to the supermarket might be closed. I'm going to have to detour around, but at the end of the day, like I still have to come home with all those groceries. And it's kind of the same thing with the sales team. Like, if you're going to call a $500,000 number, like you should have $500,000 90 days from now.
So it sounds like, so basically you do like a tell me your story pipeline review, poke holes in it. And then kind of the second phase of the QBR would be like, what's your like top target accounts, and like let's discuss those.
Yeah, exactly. So like past performance generally takes 7 to 12 minutes. Like it's not super long because you're just like, hey, I got $500,000. I called 500. I came in at 450. Here's why the deal slipped. I called 500. I came in at 150. Here's why. Like, that's a little bit more of an uncomfortable conversation because now you're up in front of your peers being like, oh, I came in at 35% of my quota for the quarter, the month, the year, whatever it might be. Quarter, I guess if we're talking about QBRs. I came in at 35%. It's like, oh, well, why? It's like, oh, well, you know what? I put all of my eggs into this one giant basket. Remember a quarter ago, we talked about I was going to go close this deal with ABC company and it was going to be $2 million. And I went all in on that. And, it slipped at the end of the quarter, but we're still on track with it and we're still tracing. It's like, all right, well, like, there's good excuses like that. And there's bad excuses like, oh, I just don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how to forecast or I don't know how to sell. Like one of those two things are true.
What's you don't have to name names and don't name names, but what's the worst QBR performance that you've seen?
Like what you see is like, you just see like 2 quarters of people getting up. Like I hate when people talk about like the same deal over and over and over again. There was a dude that worked with me a million years ago, Rob, and he was convinced he was getting like a $2.5 million deal with Lockheed Martin. And this is a terrible thing to say. It's such a 90s thing to say. His champion was this guy called Jesse. And every quarter, this guy would get up and he would talk about his $2.5 million deal with Lockheed and how Jesse was going to come through. And it got to the point where the VP of sales started calling the sales rep Jesse's girl. And like started playing that song as like his walk-up music at the beginning of the QBR. Like I would never have mentioned Lockheed Martin. Like one time being called Jesse's girl, I would never brought it up again. And by the way, like a year and a half later, he closed a $2.5 million deal with Lockheed. It was like a huge deal.
Hey, all right. Jesse came through.
Jesse finally came through. I think Jesse ended up getting fired and like the new person came in and actually got stuff done. But I just like, when you hear like the person talking about the same deal, like a couple of quarters in a row, you start to go like, this guy doesn't really know what he's talking about. There's something amiss here that is just not clicking because, they talked about ABC company last quarter. They're talking about it again this quarter. Oh, it's going to be this big deal. And nothing is changing. Like there's just no incentive or interest in that company buying anything. They just have happy years and like, oh no, I keep talking to him. He's such a nice guy. If people say that like the person's a nice guy, like that's a little bit of a red flag because it tells me like you've made a friend, not like somebody who's going to get something done for you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, then that's when you get happy years, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
and like I'll use Dima as like a really good example. Like we had a rep at Cloudinary who was working a big deal and was very friendly with the guy, and he's like, oh no, the guy really likes me and blah blah blah. And he talked about this deal for a year, and like the guy just was not the right guy, and we let that guy go. And Dima took the deal over, and in a quarter got a $1 million deal done with this company because he just goes like, oh, that guy's not the right guy. I'll go to the right guy, and we got it done.
Yeah, Dima's awesome. I worked with him.
Dima's really really good.
Yeah. So what's your secret sauce to like nail your forecast? How much effort is it for you to like actually figure out the reality of what's going on?
It's a lot because like when you were talking about like these guys like making it into like a art, I don't shave as much off of it as most people. I think like the easy way to do it is to go, oh, like my reps rolled up $5 million to me, so I'm going to forecast 4 mil. I'm going to roll 4 million up. Like I don't do it like that because it's pretty binary. Like I actually look at it on a deal by deal basis, and I can kind of go like, all right, this deal's, and I weigh like how much do I trust the seller? Like, Majid, who worked for me at Dynamic Signal, like if that guy says deals are coming in, like 100% of the time those deals are coming in. And I've had other people who are like, oh yeah, Scott, like I promised this deal's coming in. And then like at the 11th hour, they're like, oh, you know what? The guy's on vacation and he can't sign it until whatever. And like those deals never come in. So I weigh that. I weigh like, am I involved in it? Like, not that I'm like some magical magician that can make something happen, but it's a good sign. Like if there's executive parity, you kind of feel like a little bit better about it. But I do spend like a lot of like time really digging into like how much does the seller really know about the deal, and like why do I believe that they're going to make it come through? And a lot of times like you can accomplish that in a one-on-one with somebody if you're just like, hey, what's going on with this deal? And like you get to a point where if you've got 30 or 40 sellers, like you're not going to know all of the deals, but you definitely know like the main ones. And then it's like, all right, well, like I know that Apple's going to be $1 million. I know Raytheon is going to be $500,000, and I know that whatever is going to be 250. So I feel very good about those because those are the marquee deals for the quarter. And then the rest of the stuff you can just kind of like let your sales managers figure out and roll that up. And you hopefully you trust the salespeople and you trust the sales managers, and you can kind of come up with something that's a little bit accurate and dial that in.
Yeah.
Like the hard part, like it is a lot of work, but like the hard part, like when you're young at an early stage company, like if you miss by, $1 million, like that's a lot of fucking money. Like, to your point, like if Adobe misses by $1 million, like nobody even recognizes it because they're just putting like, oh, it was like 4.1 billion. But at a $20 million company, if you miss by $1 million, it's like, oh, that's a big hit.
Yeah. It's not even, I mean, like for me, it's not even necessarily about like hitting or missing or whatever. It's about like how could I help that come in? It's like let's say we missed by $1 million, it's like, yeah, that sucks. But if I find out at the 11th hour, like I'm looking at it and like what could I have done to like help that deal close? Like when did we actually know that this wasn't going to come in? Why didn't we ask like, a month and a half ago if, he was going on vacation anytime soon, or if there's anything that could block us from getting this done before the end of the quarter, like whatever, right? That's the thing for me. And I think like most sales leaders, I think would much rather spend, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, but would much rather spend their time as like almost like a field general, like helping deals get closed versus like just trying to figure out what's going on.
100%. But I think that the two kind of come hand in hand, right? If I'm a field general and I'm involved in the deals and I'm helping the sellers and we're kind of talking about it and brainstorming on the deals, then I'll have a better sense of what's going on. Like the worst is like, oh no, I've got it. It's good. You don't need to get involved. John's my buddy and he's going to take care of me and he's going to sign this thing by the end of the year. Those are the ones that I get the most nervous about because I don't have any visibility into it. And it's like, all right, well, do I really trust this seller that he's going to get that over, she's going to get that over the line? Or do I not know who this person is and I'm not involved in the deal and I don't know what's going on there? I always found, and again, like I'm not some magical person, but I've always found that like the best sellers on my team are the ones that know how to use their internal resources. And they're the ones who call me and they're like, hey, like this is the scenario. What should we do? And they're not just calling me. They'll call like 4 or 5 different people in the company to get their advice, but they're really good about leveraging their internal resources to get deals done. And the sellers who aren't that good are like the ones who are just like trying to go out and figure it out on their own and do it all by themselves. Even like a lone wolf will like go get will use their internal resources to figure things out. Whereas like, I don't even know what you call these people. Like they're just not good salespeople because they don't know. They just think that they can do everything on their own. Like,
yeah. I hated that, right? So like back in my solutions days, it would be, there was those, right? Where it's like they run their own demos and stuff and then nothing ever closes.
Right.
Like they don't want to ask for help. Or then if they do, like if they begrudgingly do because like their manager yelled at them and like, bring in an SE to the next one, there's zero context. It's almost like they want you to fail so they can prove that it's like not their fault or something like that. But yeah, those types are, you got to be able to like spot that and coach those people out, I think, pretty early on.
Yeah. And as soon, and man, I've had some really great people who just refuse any kind of help. And they're like, nah, I got it. It's fine. You don't need to get involved. And it's like, you start digging in and they get scared about answering, like, why, tell me why you think this is going to sign. Oh, well, like Joe told me it was going to sign. Well, but like, what did he really tell you?
Yeah.
Like,
how much time did you spend like watching like your team's gong calls and stuff?
I try to do at least an hour a day. Sometimes it was more, sometimes it was less, but I always like tried to make time. It was actually a lot easier when I had a commute, like pre-COVID, when everybody had to go into the office, because I could just turn it on in the car and listen to it in the car.
Yeah.
Post-COVID, I had to like really force myself to sit down and listen to calls. And even when the deal that I just wrapped up with happened, like I was still trying to do like a couple of hours a week of just like listening and coaching on that. Because like, I feel like that's kind of part of the job, is to like understand like what's going on with the deals and coach people.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, the
Do
hard
you
part about
think,
that is like, how do you like, I never try to push my style on people, but try to coach to get the result. And that's always the hard part. Cause like I have said some things to people, like when I'm trying to coach them, I'm like, oh, why don't you just like walk down to their office and get the money? And then people like take that literally and they think I'm an absolute lunatic.
I would love to see somebody actually try to do that.
Dude, Omar Davina did that. Omar would like sit in people's offices on the last day of the quarter, and he was a fucking good sales rep, dude. He's like the CEO of some company now, man, but he was so good. And we would like joke like, hey, why don't you just go down to the office? And like he lived in Manhattan, so he would just like shoot over to their office and like knock on the guy's office door and it's like, hey, I have that contract you told me you were going to sign. Can you sign it now? And
Yeah.
probably 3 out of 5 times he'd get the signed contract, and the other 2 he'd get thrown out on his ear.
Hey, I mean, still got some done.
Those are some good odds.
Yeah, you got to have like a certain personality to to be able to. I couldn't imagine myself doing it. I'd just be like, I don't know, too uncomfortable to try to do that. But
It would be super uncomfortable, but man, he did really, really well, and he got a lot of contracts done, and a lot of them just by showing up at the person's office.
Yeah. So I want to get back to like the QBR discussion.
Yeah.
So I've seen them run well, and I've seen them run poorly at different companies. I think it always comes down to like the attitude of the CRO or VP of sales or whatever, and like the kind of like culture that they're trying to build and foster. But I kind of have like a bad taste in my mouth about QBRs.
Yeah, sure.
Like they've seemed like most of them have seemed like there's valuable parts of it. Getting everybody together is awesome. Learning from things. I think if like QBRs focused on that instead of like the intricate details of every single deal, and you got to watch like 30 salespeople march up there and like do the same presentation over and over, I think that's probably not the best use of time.
I would challenge it. I think like one of the things that's really interesting that I like about it is, first of all, I'm a laptops off guy. I'm a no in my QBRs. It's like no laptops, no phones. Like you're there to pay attention to like what people are talking about. And I strongly enforce that. And I think that makes a big difference because it forces everybody to be engaged.
Do you invite, the other thing like people to participate? So like if Dima's up there doing his thing, do you ask like the crowd to give their 2 cents?
100%. Yeah. What the fuck do I know? I'm just like one person. Like if I've got 30 like smart salespeople who have closed these deals and done these things, like I want their input on it. And, and we've seen people go, oh, you know what? Like I happen to know that guy from this company from 2 jobs ago. Put me in, or I happen to like, we did a deal just like this. Here's what we did to do that. And that's part of the reason that they go 90 minutes is not because like the person's just there, giving a 90-minute presentation to a silent audience. I want everybody in the room to participate because everybody's got like kind of a different idea and a different feeling and a different style of how they would handle it. And part of it is like, okay, like, oh, I'm working on this deal. Hey, what would you do? What would you do? What would you do? What would you do? in that scenario. And then you start to get like, oh, well, okay, you get some really interesting, unique ideas out of that whole thing.
Yeah. That exercise I think is super valuable. Like, and I
It was
think it's
awesome.
like, yeah, that is awesome. One of the companies I was at before, it was almost like an exercise just to like make people look stupid. I
Oh, that's
felt
terrible.
bad for like the
No, I
sales
wouldn't.
reps that
I
would
would
get up
never want to do
there.
that. Like, how do
Yeah.
you get any respect or any kind of respect for like from your team if you're just like putting them through an exercise to look stupid?
Yeah, exactly.
No, like
Well, and this is the
my
thing too, where it's like they're sandbagging, like they don't even want to like bring
of
stuff up.
course, yeah.
It's like,
Like, look, like I think like that's a cultural thing, Rob. Like I like my salespeople to make a shit ton of money,
yeah,
and once your sales team knows that your goal is to help them make a shit ton of money, then they'll
yeah,
do basically anything for you because they know that you have their best interest at heart. And
yeah,
if you don't go into a meeting, or if you don't like lead a sales team with like this idea of like, hey, how do I make my sales team fucking rich? I just talked to a guy that worked for me at Sovos. He made $1.5 million this year. He's like teed up to make $1.5 million next year. Like I couldn't be happier for the dude. Like I love when salespeople make $1 million. I like writing those checks.
yeah.
And
Well, of course. I mean, I always say
if
too, I'm like, you want to send your entire sales team to President's Club,
fuck, I
right?
want my entire sales team to buy beach houses.
Yeah,
And I think like if the sales team knows that you have their back and you have their best interest, then it's like, okay, like I'm doing this exercise because Scott wants me to get this $500,000 deal closed because he knows I'll make $75,000 in commission on it.
yeah,
And then people go, okay, like now they have a partner, not somebody who's just like up there to make them look like fools for 90 minutes.
yep.
I also invite like, and I encourage like everybody in the company to come. Like I put like an all hands invite out, and anybody that wants to show up and listen in can listen in, because like who knows, like some developer might be sitting there and he happens to want to listen in, and he's like, oh, you know what they're asking for is on the roadmap. Like let's go and put it that way. Or some CS rep.
That's another super interesting thing. I love the idea of having product CS marketing in on these things, right? Because like those teams are so siloed that they never
Absolutely.
talk, right? So I mean, and then product almost like ignores any feature requests from sales because they're coming from like the salespeople,
Yeah.
and then it's a game of telephone because like the salespeople aren't like necessarily equipped to answer or like translate the product requirements from the customer's mouth or the prospect's mouth into like a ticket, and then the product manager has to translate that like into actual technical requirements. Like cut out the middleman, like get everybody involved in these things.
And Rob, they hear that in these the product marketing team or the product team or whoever like hears that on these QBR calls and just goes like, oh yeah, just put me on a call. And like within like 48 hours, now you've got the client talking to the product team, and that accelerates your deals.
Yeah, exactly. I think like the more of that can be done, the better. I like the idea that you bring those folks in.
Invite everybody. Bring the CEO in. Bring the whoever. Anybody that wants to come in, CFO. Anybody that wants to come in and like hear how this is run. 99% of them say no, but like the ones that show up always show up with like something really valuable.
Yeah, I feel like the CFO should want to show up. Right? Like, it
depends on the CFO.
Say it didn't. True. Yeah,
I know some CFOs who have like zero interest in showing up for that. So
yeah. See, I wish I would have seen one of your QBRs because it doesn't sound like any of the QBRs that I've been to in the past.
No, my QBR, call Dima or call Josh. Like my QBRs are solid.
Yeah,
we have a lot of fun, and it's very interactive and very like at the end of it, like every rep comes out with like a long laundry list of like, oh, okay, like this is what I need to do for this deal. This is what I should do for this deal. This is what I should do for this deal. And, I think that I did some analysis on, I can't remember what it was, but like the deals that were talked about in QBRs had like an 80% close rate. Now, some of them were like pretty well baked. So it's like, a
lot of it's like self-selected.
Absolutely. Oh, I've got this huge deal that's going to close in 30 days. Like, all right. But like, I'm
not putting the deal on like my QBR presentation that like hasn't responded to me in 60 days.
Sure, because that's not a real deal anyway. So why would you put that there?
Yeah.
So like it is a little bit of a self-selection there, but but what was interesting is during COVID, we skipped a QBR and close rates went way down. And we even ran like analysis of like regular close rates on virtual QBRs, and close rates on in-person, and in-person were by far the highest ones.
Yeah. Well, I think like the other intangibles too of like, sales teams are like the one team. Like it's a little bit different nowadays because like everybody's kind of, remote or partially remote, but like sales teams have always been remote, like they're globally distributed, and like most of them don't work out of a office. This was cool before COVID, and so I think just getting everybody together can like build that team thing, because like even the best salespeople that aren't the lone wolf types, they're still like sitting at home for the most part and working. And it's like, it's hard to, and sales is like very competitive, right? It's constantly, the top 10% go to President's Club. So it's like very competitive where it's like, I want to beat my colleague, right? Because there's rewards for that. And some of that, I think like healthy competition, like can and should be fostered like that. But getting people together and like, having fun and talking through these problems, I think can make the environment a lot more collaborative. And I think there's too many sales teams that like don't have that culture of collaboration.
Yeah, I agree. No, it's good to get everybody in face to face. Like as you get a bigger team, right? If you get like 200 or 300 people, like then it becomes a little bit more challenging to do that on a quarterly basis in person. But I think it's really important to do, even if you have to do it virtually with a smaller team on a like team by team basis. I think it's pretty important.
Yeah. So how much of that stuff can you pull into like, I don't know, day to day? Maybe not like day to day, but like at least like weekly or whatever.
Well, like the one thing like I look at is like, what are we doing that's stupid? And you don't say it like that because I said it the first time. Like the first time I did a QBR, like I actually said it like that. Like, what are we doing that's stupid? But like you can kind of hint at like, okay, like what are the things that we need to change? Like what are business processes that aren't efficient? Like those are some of the questions that I ask. And the list that I get is ridiculous. So like, oh, why do we have this field in Salesforce? What does it do? Why do we have to do this? Tell me about like why we implemented this process. That doesn't make any sense. And what you get out of it is like a lot of impetus for business change too. And to me, like that's pretty important. Kind of, I want my salespeople to be as efficient as possible. And if there's something that's blocking them because of like some goofy internal process, like let's hear about that. Like if it's a really bad one, then you hear about it like almost immediately. But if it's like kind of like an annoyance, it's like, oh, man, why we got like, then you can just kind of like pull that, that comes out and then you change it right away.
Well, I wonder, okay, so this is maybe a topic for another day or something, but this is something I think about a lot, is exactly like what you're like the whole process change, right? Like that doesn't happen a lot on sales teams where it's just like, this is the way it's always been done. And like stepping outside of the process is almost like punished, right? But like if you do that, you're never going to like explore those pathways that could like lead you to something more efficient. So like having this like rigid process where it's like somebody does come in on the first call, and I'm saying this because I went through this where I was trying to buy something for us. And I was like, it was exactly that scenario. It's like, I've used this in the past. Like, just send me a fucking contract. Like, I want to start today if I can. And it's like, then they put me through their like 40 questions exercise because they have boxes to check on MedPick, and they literally can't move the deal to the next stage or even to like, procurement or whatever until, it won't let them. It's gated. They get a warning in Salesforce that says you can't do that until you fill these things out. So they have to ask them, and it's like, well, what the hell? And then I have like 2 weeks, and now I got to talk to like another person, and I got to look at other solutions now.
And I think like a good sales rep or a good SDR probably should have. This is going to be like the no shit comment of the podcast here, Rob. Like they probably should have just gone to their boss and said, "Hey, like I've got this guy. He's used us in the past. He's ready to buy now. If we send him a contract, he's signing it this afternoon. I'm not going to fill out these 40 fucking questions. Like figure out how to override that for me." But I think like a lot of people like. Because like we just like there's a little bit of fear of like rocking the boat that they don't want to do.
A lot of times like I've seen like scorecards and grading where it's like how well you ask these questions on an intro call.
Yeah,
So it's
which I
like you
get.
have to do it.
I think that makes sense in 98% of the cases. Like that's probably a good methodology, is like train people how to ask better, smarter questions. But once in a while, you're going to get a phone call that says, "Hey, I used you 2 jobs ago, and I want to buy it again.
Yeah.
Help me make my life
I mean,
easier."
even beyond that, though, like you got to be like adaptable, right? Like those 40
Yeah,
questions, you have to ask them on the first call, or should you like spread those out and like spend some time, showing them what your product does and helping them envision what their life could be like if they used it instead of.
There's that too. Like,
I'm a
there's
big
so many
fan
like
of like the
goofy
demo
processes.
discovery thing where it's like,
Yeah,
if I do have to ask these 40 questions, I should do it with context, right? And I'm asking
right.
you this because look, like right here, we integrate with your CRM. So I need to know like what CRM are you using? How many stages do you have? Like whatever, right? Because when we do that, this is what you get from it. Like, oh yeah, we use Salesforce. We like that's a much
Yeah.
better, more natural way
Yes.
of like having a conversation as well.
Yeah, I'm showing you this because why? I'll give you a good example of one that came out of it. Josh Schulz, who I don't think that you know, he was like one of the top sellers at Cloudinary. Josh has this practice that he calls 5 questions. And before every meeting, he sits down and he preps and he just writes down, like, these are the 5 questions that I absolutely have to get answers for in this next meeting. And sometimes it's 3 and sometimes it's 4 and sometimes it's 5, but it's, 5 questions just sounds good. So we implemented that and it became part of the vernacular, right? So to your question about like, what comes out of the QBR that you use every day? Like that became part of the vernacular. And I think it's such a good exercise. And it was just like, okay, hey, we're prepping for this meeting. What are our 5 questions that we're going to ask? Like, what do we really want to understand? Coming out of
That's
this?
hard, man. I mean, like I wish, like I'm terrible at that. I mean, not because I don't want to do that or I don't know to do that. It's just like I got like 8 meetings back to back. Like, I don't have time for that.
100%. It's hard. It's a difficult exercise to do, but I think it's a really important one. And what happens, Rob, is like the more you start thinking about it, like the faster those come, right? Because you'll get on a customer call and you're like, okay, here's you can write it down in 3 minutes before your next call starts.
Yeah.
To crank that out. But I think that's a super good exercise to take it a step further. It's like, okay, like the question we're going to ask is like, tell me about your paperwork process, right? As a weird example, but if they give us, what is our response to that answer? Like, that's kind of like level 2 of that exercise, is then mapping out like, okay, well, what are my responses to their responses?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if you had time for that, right? I think like somebody like you can do that. And I think a lot of the sales reps I've worked with, especially like the young ones that like just came up from us, like they don't know what good looks like. They don't know what the questions are. It's tough. It's like I get on some levels like why some of this process stuff like is enforced so strictly early on. Because like overdoing it is probably better than underdoing it. But I mean, I think like the contextual information that you would need to have is difficult to come by in a lot of cases.
Yeah, it's also hard to run a 100-person organization if you've got 100 people going off in 90 different directions there. Like you kind of have to like crack down a little bit and go like, all right, this is what our process is, and like you're gonna be a good soldier and follow it 99% of the time.
So yeah, okay. Here's another thing I'm gonna throw out there. I don't think that in like 5 years that the concept of like a sales stage is going to exist. Like, because we're talking about forecasting, and I think stages are like
they're so arbitrary. Like, I mean, like, because like fuck, I made them up. Like, I probably stole the ones that we used at WebEx 25 years ago. Like, everybody uses the same ones. It's like, oh, like we're going to do discovery, then we're going to do demo, and then we're going to do negotiation, and then we're going to do contracts, and then we're going to do close, and we'll ring the gong. Like, it's all the same.
Okay, so like we integrate with all sorts of different setups and customers and whatnot. I've seen some that are like 3 stages. I'm like, cool, that's pretty good. Probably doesn't help you actually like forecast when that's going to close, but so it's like too little resolution. And then I've seen one that was like 12 stages. I'm like, that is like nuts. Like, who the hell would even know what stages is?
Dude,
my other problem with stages is like nothing ever
half stages. Like I was at a company that had half stages. Like, oh, this is in stage 5.5. And it was like in half because like somebody had to like review and approve something before it could go to 6. That's a really interesting idea. I need to think about that a little bit. I like the concept of like getting rid of sales stages. Like the reason that sales stages exist is for forecasting, right? You know, it's like, oh, if it gets to 10%, like if it's in the discovery, then it's 10%. If it gets to demo, then it's 25. And by the way, like very few companies actually put any science behind that.
None,
they don't fucking know if it's like,
anyways.
Is it really 25% at discovery, or is it 22%, or is it 31%? Like you don't know.
Yeah.
And do you adjust it on a quarterly basis? No, like that's part of the problem.
So, I mean, the other thing is too, it's like, it's not even necessarily predictive of like forecasting, right? Like later on, it probably is, like once you're in like, you know, the last state of procurement or whatever you call it, like then maybe, but like anything before that, and I know this because we have the data on this, where it's like,
of course, yeah,
you have your average duration of a stage, right? The variance is so high, and like the average and the median are usually like not even close to each other, meaning that like I could be in a stage, it's like, okay, well, this stage takes on average 22 days, right? But that's like a bullshit metric, because like sometimes it takes 5 and sometimes it takes 120, and when there's that much like variance, like it's like it loses its predictive power.
Yeah. So here's like one thing that I do when I manage teams is I do look at aging and staging pretty closely. Because like if I know like the average duration of stage 3 is 22 days, let's just say hypothetically, and that deal gets to 44, I have Salesforce set up a trigger to alert me that this thing's been in sales stage for twice as long. And then I can go and figure out like, well, why is this taking longer than every other deal that we've ever done? And I can use that as a lever to coach reps and figure out like, okay, this thing is clearly stuck. How do we unstick it?
Yep.
Oh, my head's still spinning about getting rid of sales stages though. I like it. I think it's like, you know, if you think about like the sales, like when we were kids before GPS, it was like, oh, if you drive down the road and when you see the yellow building, that's where you turn left. And then you get to like the rickety mailbox, that's where you turn right. And then you go down like 3 stories, you know, 3 houses down, and that's my house. Like that's kind of what the sales stages are now. So there's going to have to be like another like more modern GPS that can calculate how far away am I from actually getting this thing done.
Yeah.
And I think like what's cool about like what you guys are working on is like you're kind of doing that now. And when you can start to do some predictive analytics to go like, oh, there's traffic on 101 right now. So it's going to take you an extra 15 minutes to get to your destination, and alert you to that. Like that becomes super cool. And then it's like, I don't really care where the rickety mailbox is. Like I just know like this is the route that I have to go. And as long as like I'm on that route, I'm going to get there at this date.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. And like every deal is different, right? And here's the thing, it's like our sales stages are set up, and like salespeople, sales leaders, like so much like time spent on building process and process enforcement, but like that shit goes out the window like after the first call, you know? Like it's all totally. Like the buyers have their buying process, and that's the thing that you need to understand. And like when you understand their process and how they buy and how they're going to look to evaluate this, and like, you know, we're evaluating 4 different vendors, and then we want to run a pilot, and then we want to do this and that. You know, even if you want to opt out of that and say like, we're not playing this game, it doesn't matter. Like then they're not going to buy you, right? So you do need to understand their buying process and the things that they need to do to get it done. And that's what the stages don't fit that paradigm, but that's the reality. Correct. Of like how sales actually works.
Correct. And I think that goes back to MedPick is like understanding what's your decision criteria, what's your decision process, what's paperwork process, like all of those things become like really critical to understand that their buying process. And
that's exactly what it is. It's like the thing I don't like. Okay, so like MedPick is closer than stages, but like MedPick is like a methodology, and like so you need like some sort of analysis of like what are the things that you know that you need to know to get this deal done, and like what are the timelines associated with like finding out or completing those things.
Like I can tell you by asking about pain and metrics whether a deal is going to happen. Like if you have a big enough pain, you're going to do something to fix that pain. But if it's like, you know what, like I got a little bit of a headache because I had 1 extra glass of wine last night, like I'm not going to race over and get a brain scan and like pay for that. I'm going to I can take an Advil maybe, or I'll just have another glass of
Little hair
water
of the
and suck it
dog.
up. Yeah, or whatever, another glass of wine. So I think like understanding that becomes like the foundation for like an important forecast.
Yeah, I mean, that is the
So
foundation for an important
I,
forecast. Like the
I
fairy dust and all that. It's like, hey, I got these
yeah,
4 deals in procurement. It's like, I don't give a shit. Like, what's actually like, what are the details of like
yeah,
that deal? Like, what needs to be done in this one? What needs to be done in this one? Yeah, this one's in procurement, but they also said that their zip process takes 3 months, right? It's like that
yeah.
doesn't. We should
Sales
talk about
stages
that.
die.
Next one.
All right. Yeah, I agree. All right. So I just made a note. Will sales stages die for our next conversation? I love it.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, I don't want to keep you from
this is a fun one.
golf round. Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
I've thought a lot about the sales stages and how they should die. So I'm excited for that conversation.
All right. Let's definitely talk about that next week. I'm keen to get your take on it.
Right on, man. Cool. Well,
always great to see you.
Well,
Appreciate it, man. Thank you. All right. We'll talk soon. Cheers.